The man who wrote Total Praise lived a secret that would shock the gospel world. Richard Smallwood, the voice behind some of Christianity's most powerful anthems, was regularly beaten by the man he called Dad, only to discover decades later that this abuser wasn't even his biological father. And today, December 30th, 2025, the gospel legend has died at age 77, taking with him a story of pain, redemption, and extraordinary musical genius that deserves to be told. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button because this story goes deeper than you ever imagined, and we're about to uncover the full truth behind one of gospel music's most influential figures. Richard Smallwood passed away this morning from complications of kidney failure at Brook Grove Rehabilitation and Nursing Center in Sandy Spring, Maryland. The timing is heartbreaking. Just yesterday, he celebrated his 77th birthday on November 30th. Within hours, his family confirmed through Facebook that the man who gave the world "I Love the Lord," "Center of My Joy," and countless other gospel standards had taken his final breath. The gospel community is reeling. Social media has exploded with tributes from artists, pastors, and fans who grew up singing his songs. But to understand the magnitude of this loss, you need to know the journey that brought him here, and it's a journey few people truly knew about. Born November 30th, 1948, in Atlanta, Georgia, and raised in Washington, D.C., Smallwood's childhood was marked by violence and deception. In his 2019 autobiography titled Total Praise, he revealed the brutal reality behind his rise to fame. The regular beatings from his stepfather created scars that went beyond the physical. Imagine being a child, gifted with extraordinary musical talent, but coming home every day to fear and pain. The psychological damage of growing up in an abusive household created a foundation of trauma that no amount of success could completely erase. Then, as if that wasn't devastating enough, discovering as an adult that his entire understanding of his family was built on a lie, that the man who had terrorized him wasn't even his biological father, shattered whatever sense of identity he'd managed to build. This wasn't just a family secret. It was a wound that would eventually manifest in ways that nearly destroyed him. Smallwood initially hesitated to include these details in his autobiography. He wrestled with the decision, knowing that exposing family scandals could hurt people he cared about. But he also understood something profound. There were countless others sitting in church pews every Sunday, hiding their own abuse, their own family dysfunction, believing they had to keep up appearances. By telling his truth, he gave them permission to acknowledge theirs. But even through that darkness, music became his escape and his salvation. Smallwood was a prodigy, showing exceptional talent from an early age. He studied at Howard University, one of America's most prestigious historically black universities, where he graduated cum laude. This wasn't just any music program. His classmates included legends like Donny Hathaway, whose soul music would define a generation, and Felicia Rashad, who would become one of television's most beloved figures. At Howard, Smallwood wasn't just learning music theory and piano technique. He was absorbing the sounds that would revolutionize gospel music, blending classical training with the raw emotional power of the black church tradition, mixing European harmonic sophistication with African American spiritual expression. In 1977, Smallwood founded the Richard Smallwood Singers, and the gospel world would never be the same. His debut album spent an astounding 87 weeks on Billboard's gospel chart. 87 weeks. Let that sink in. That's not a hit. That's a cultural phenomenon. That's nearly 2 years of sustained popularity in an industry where most albums disappear after a few weeks. What made Smallwood different was his ability to create sophisticated, contemporary arrangements that appealed to young, educated audiences while maintaining the spiritual depth that made gospel music powerful. Traditional gospel music was often characterized by call and response, by raw emotion, by shouting and running in the aisles. Smallwood kept that fire but dressed it in orchestral arrangements, jazz harmonies, and production values that rivaled anything coming out of secular music studios. His music wasn't just for Sunday morning. It was for concert halls, for Whitney Houston's blockbuster film, The Preacher's Wife, for mainstream artists looking to tap into something deeper than commercial success. Destiny's Child covered his work. Boys II Men sang his songs. Aretha Franklin, the queen of soul herself, recorded his compositions. Yolanda Adams built performances around his melodies. Even Stevie Wonder, one of music's true geniuses, recognized Smallwood's brilliance and performed his material. When artists of that caliber choose your music, it says something about the quality and the depth of what you've created. Total Praise, his signature composition, became one of the most performed gospel songs in history. Walk into any church, anywhere in the world, black, white, Latino, Asian, Pentecostal, Baptist, Catholic, and there's a good chance they've sung Total Praise. The lyrics, "Lord, I will lift mine eyes to the hills, knowing my help is coming from you," became a lifeline for people in their darkest moments. Cancer patients sang it in hospital rooms. Grieving parents sang it at funerals. People fighting addiction sang it in recovery meetings. The song transcended its religious context to become a universal expression of hope. Whitney Houston's rendition of "I Love the Lord" for the Preacher's Wife soundtrack introduced his genius to millions who might never step foot in a church. That movie, released in 1996, became one of the highest-grossing gospel films ever made, and Smallwood's music was central to its emotional impact. Suddenly, people who listened to R&B and pop radio were hearing his compositions, and they couldn't deny the power. His music transcended denominational lines, racial boundaries, and even religious affiliations. That's the mark of a true master. Over 5 decades, Smallwood earned 8 Grammy nominations. 8 times, the Recording Academy recognized his work as among the best in gospel music. He won multiple Stellar Awards, which honor excellence in gospel music, and multiple Dove Awards from the Gospel Music Association. In 2006, the ultimate honor arrived when he was inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame, cementing his place among gospel music royalty alongside legends like Mahalia Jackson, Thomas Dorsey, and Andre Crouch. His estimated net worth reached $10 million through album sales, live performances, songwriting royalties, and production work. Every time Total Praise was performed in a church, every time I Love the Lord played on the radio, every time an artist recorded one of his songs, Smallwood received royalties. That's how you build wealth as a songwriter. Create something timeless, and it pays you for the rest of your life. But money and awards couldn't heal the damage from his past. Around age 30, as his career was reaching new heights, Smallwood began battling clinical depression so severe he couldn't get out of bed. The depression was debilitating, paralyzing. Suicidal thoughts plagued him. He would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to function, while the world expected him to write uplifting songs and minister to congregations. For a gospel artist, someone whose entire career was built on uplifting others and proclaiming faith, admitting to depression felt impossible. The stigma in the Black church community around mental health was crushing. There was this pervasive belief that if you had enough faith, if you prayed hard enough, if you trusted God completely, you wouldn't struggle with mental illness. Depression was seen as a spiritual problem, not a medical one. Seeking therapy seemed like admitting defeat, like his faith wasn't strong enough. Taking medication felt like a betrayal of everything he preached. But Smallwood made a choice that would define the second half of his life and potentially save thousands of others. He sought professional help. He started therapy. He took medication. And he refused to hide it. He became an advocate for mental health awareness, particularly within African American communities and church circles, speaking openly about his struggles in interviews, from pulpits, in his autobiography. He used his platform to tell people that depression isn't a moral failing, that therapy isn't weakness, that medication isn't lack of faith. He quite literally saved lives by being vulnerable about his own struggle, giving permission to pastors, choir directors, church members, and gospel artists to seek help without shame. Smallwood never married. He described his singing ensemble, and later the backing choir Vision, which he formed to continue his musical mission, as his family. The singers who performed with him became his closest relationships. He maintained intense privacy about his personal relationships, choosing to let his music speak louder than tabloid headlines or gossip columns. In an era where every celebrity's personal life becomes public consumption, Smallwood drew clear boundaries. He is survived by 2 brothers and 3 foster sisters, and by a musical legacy that will outlive us all. Today, gospel music mourns a titan. The man who survived childhood abuse, discovered devastating family secrets, battled depression for decades, earned millions while staying humble, and still managed to create music that lifted millions of souls has gone home. Richard Smallwood showed us that you don't have to pretend to be perfect to praise God. You just have to be honest. You can be broken and still be used. You can struggle with mental health and still have faith. You can come from trauma and still create beauty. Rest in power to a legend who made broken people feel seen, who turned pain into praise, and who proved that the most powerful worship comes from those who've walked through the valley and survived to tell about it.